Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa azwajihi wa zurriyyatihi ajma'in. I wanted to look at a couple of paragraphs of Heidegger's Kant book, Kant and the Problem of Metaphysics. And on this page, I basically want to look at this paragraph, but just to provide a bit of context, I'll go back a bit. The ground for the source for laying the ground for metaphysics is human pure reason, so that it is precisely the humanness of reason, that is its finitude, which will be essential for the core of this problematic of ground laying, that is providing the foundation. Hence it is worthwhile for the characterization of the field of origin to concentrate on the clarification of the essence of finitude of human knowledge. The finitude of reason, however, is in no way consists only or primarily in the fact that human knowing demonstrate many sorts of deficiencies such as instability, imprecision, and the potential for making errors. Rather, this finitude lies in the essential structure of knowledge itself. So the finitude of reason is due to the nature of human knowledge, I guess. It's talking about structure of knowledge itself. So the finitude of human reason is essential limitations So finitude of human reason doesn't consist in the fact that human knowing demonstrates many sorts of deficiencies. Imprecision and errors, etc. That's not what human reason's finitude consists in, but it consists in the very structure of or essential structure of knowledge itself, and I'm guessing human knowledge. So what's the difference? I think one thing we can say that here, if human reason is finitude, is understood as probably in a negative sense, in that human knowledge is prone to limitations and errors. So that's why human reasons, that's what the finitude of human reason consists in. But here we are looking at the fact that it is the essence of knowledge or very structure of knowledge. I'm guessing it's human knowledge he's talking about, which makes possible the finitude of human reason, so that's more positive. but it's still not clear what's the difference really in my mind. I mean, obviously we are describing it positively and negatively, but what is that? Does that amount to essential difference? I'm not sure about at this point. Let's read it again, I guess. So that it is precisely the humanness of reason, that is its finitude, which will be essential for the core of this problematic of ground line. Hence it is worthwhile for this characterization of the field of origin to concentrate on the clarification of the essence of the finitude of human knowledge. So he's talking about human knowledge. This finitude of reason, however, so he jumps from knowledge to reason now. However, in no way consists only or primarily in the fact that human knowing demonstrate many sorts of deficiencies such as instability, imprecision, and the potential for making errors. Rather, the finitude lies in the essential structure of knowledge itself. But why does this finitude lies in the essential structure of knowledge? Because of the limitations of human knowing, I guess. So the tactical limitedness of knowledge. What is tactical in there? Knowledge is first and foremost the consequence of the essence. It's still not clear. I mean, the point is clear, but why is it different? These two ways of looking at why are they different? It's not clear yet, but it probably will become clear as we go ahead. Okay, let's move on. In order to set forth the essence of the finitude of human knowledge, a general characterization of the essence of knowing is required. So that's the process. Is it human knowing or just knowing in general? And the knowing here is probably the word he is using is translated by other authors as cognition, because using the word erkenntnis, which is translated by modern translators, more recent translators, as knowing, as cognition rather than knowing. Anyway, so already in this cognitive knowing, already in this regard, what Kant says in the first sentence of the thematic discussion in the critique of pure reason is usually appraised much too lightly. So 24D it is. And what does Kant says? In whatever manner and by whatever means a knowing. So normally this is translated as cognition these days. May relate to objects. Intuition is that through which it relates itself immediately to them, to the objects, and upon which all thought as a means. So there's a distinction between thought and intuition, and knowing is said to be. So in whatever manner and by whatever means a knowing may relate to objects. Intuition is that through which it relates immediately to them, and upon which all thought as a means is directed. So intuition is primary relation with the object. and without that, knowledge would not be possible, or at least cognition would not be possible. And thought is there in the service of intuition rather than a independent or co-equal element in that. I think that's what he is aiming at. Let's look at Kant, whether that's what he says. So what Kant is saying is that in whatever manner and by whatever means a knowing may relate to object, cognition, let's say. What does he mean in whatever manner? I guess whether it's sense into inner or outer, or whether it is intellectual intuition, I don't know. So, in whatever manner and by whatever means a knowing may relate to objects, intuition is that through which. So, intuition is what? The direct relation establishes, not thought. Doesn't matter whether intuition is a sense intuition or intellectual intuition. Intuition is that which gives us a direct contact with the object, and without the direct contact with the object, there's no possibility of cognition or knowing, I guess. So in that sense, thought is always going to serve this intuition. Intuition provides the primacy or primary foundation of knowing. I think that's what he's saying. So the intuition for Kant is direct relation with the object of cognition or cognitive knowledge, and it is contrasted with thought, it is contrasted with concepts. So intuition is something particular, it is contrasted with universal in that. So thought is empty, universals are empty, concept is empty without the particular, without the object, without the non-conceptual content. That's what Kant is saying. So intuition is the immediate relation, the power of representation or cognition to the object itself, to the individual object. So in that sense, intuition has primacy because it relates us to the content, to the object, in fact to the truth. So in that sense, Heidegger is right, I think. And we would say, I don't know what Heidegger would say, but we would say that's the empiricist legacy within Kant's thought. Okay. So now this is the actually the passage which I wanted to look at, but that was the context. So Heidegger says here, in order to understand the critique of pure reason, this point, that the intuition, primacy of intuition point must be hammered in, so to speak. Knowing is I think what he means here is generally nowadays translated as cognition in the Kantian scholarship anyway, or we can say cognitive knowing is primarily intuiting. From this, so this needs to be hammered in. From this, it at once becomes clear that the new interpretation of knowledge as judging violates the decisive sense of Kantian problem. So judging is not knowledge. Judging, obviously, or it is not primarily knowledge, but I guess knowledge in the sense of judging is more like vision rather than erkentness. So there might be some sort of ambiguity here in the use of knowledge. This knowledge is different than this knowledge. So Heidegger might be paddling on that to make this point, but the point is well taken, even though the reasoning would be fallacious if that's what he's doing. So in order to understand the critique of pure reason, this point must be hammered in, so to speak. Knowing is primarily intuiting. From this, it at once becomes clear that new interpretation of knowing or knowledge as judging violates the decisive sense of the Kantian problem. I think by Kant himself later, all thinking is merely in the service of intuition. If by thinking here we mean judging or conceptualization, thinking is not simply alongside intuition, also at hand, but rather according to its own inherent structure. Whose structure? Thinking's or knowledge's? It serves that to which intuition is primarily and constantly directed. So what he's saying here is we can't say that, we shouldn't say that. So generally we think of knowledge in the Kantian. So intuition provides us with the content, and then we have concepts, and they provide you with the forms, and obviously you have the form of intuition as well, and then you have thinking as a whole as judging, or thinking as representation of the representation, or I think, which must accompany every synthesis here in order to become knowledge. So we seem to think that there are two, A and B are two equally important horns or two side of the balance which can constitute the knowledge. But what Heidegger is saying is that we should rather think of intuition as primary, because that's what provides a direct contact with the object or content, and thinking is secondary, essential, but in the service of object and in the service of knowledge if object is. So in a sense here, object is being prioritized over subject in a sense. The subject becomes subservient. So in that sense, this is a move away from philosophy of the subject as well. Move away from thinking is the move away from the philosophy of the subject and move towards sort of ontology as well, I guess. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so thinking is not simply alongside intuition, also at hand, but rather according to its own inherent structure. I'm not sure whether this structure is referring to a structure of thinking or a structure of knowledge serves that to which intuition. If thinking is to be essentially relative to intuition, however, then both intuition and thinking must have a certain inherent relation that allows their unification. If thinking is to be essentially relative to intuition, like subservient, then they must have inherent relationship that are. I think thinking and intuition don't have to be in a relative position, even if they are co-equal partners. If they are to combine in order to become, I guess what he's saying is that if intuition or thinking is subservient to not the dominant partner, even co-equal partner, then there must be basic affinity between thinking and intuition in order for them to be able to combine, because it's not as if thinking is like subject is imposing thinking on intuition. That would be possible if we had that other reading where thinking is primary, so knowledge is subjective in that sense. But if not, intuition is primary and knowledge is basically objective in primarily, then it's thinking is not imposing itself on knowledge, so they must have more natural way. So there must be some primordial ground where thinking and object and thought, intuition and thought, has some primordial ground where they are not different in a sense. Their ultimate source is the same. That's what sense I'm getting. And then he goes on to sort of say what that might be. This relation, this descendancy from the same class, genus, the same class. So thinking and intuition belong to the same genus is expressed in the fact that both of them is this species. For both of them, in general, is this species. So representation is, the power of representation is what grounds, or what power of representation is what is shared by intuition and thinking. Okay, so I think that's enough. That's all I wanted to look at it in this session anyway.